Recording in
Just starting. Have a
progress.
seat, wherever you'd like. Who's pronounce your last name? Scahill? I went to school and I was mispronouncing it. With us this evening is our committee clerk, Tom Scahill. And with us at the beginning of the meeting is Councillor Mark Laredo at large from Ward 7, Councillor David Kalis at large from Ward 8, Councillor Andrea Kelly at large from Ward 3, and Deb Crossley at large from Ward 5. So we have a quorum and we can get started. The first item on the agenda for discussion is 546-22. This item is a grant of location from National Grid at Paulson Road. It was held at our last meeting on December 7th. The public hearing is still open, so I will be taking public comment on this as well. I understand there's an engineer from NGrid at the meeting this evening.
Good evening. I'm Tammy Saporito. I'm the community manager for Newton. And I believe I have two public works engineers, the manager of the engineering group, Melissa Owens, and also our public works engineer, Ken Moyes. I have sent them the links and they are joining this meeting for this evening.
Okay, that's terrific, Tammy. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Are Melissa and Ken on now, or are you waiting for them to log on?
I'm going to believe they are on.
Okay, great.
I'm here.
Great, thank you.
Melissa Owens, nice to meet you.
So there is a list of questions that was in the Friday packet. And all the committee members, I hope you took a look at it. So I wanted to start with some of the questions, unless there's anything else you want to do to introduce this item. Okay, I also just want to introduce our engineer, John Daglian, is here this evening. And let me see if there's any other staff on. I'm not seeing anybody, Tom. Do you?
Councillor Norton, Councillor Danberg is trying to.
Okay. And Councillor Emily Norton, Ward Councillor from Ward 2, has just joined. And Councillor Vicky Danberg at large from Ward 6. So welcome. Thank you.
Councillor Crossley.
Yes, Deb, didn't I introduce you already?
I wasn't here, so I don't think so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Deb Crossley at large from Ward 5. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I wanted to start with if one of the engineers wants to make an introduction about this item, and have you seen our list of questions? Melissa or Ken?
Sure, this is Melissa Owens. We have seen the list of questions. This project on Paulson Road is in response to a water intrusion issue in the main at that site. If you'd like, I can just start addressing the questions, I believe in the order that they were asked.
Okay, could you tell us a little bit more about the water intrusion issue and why you can't do a repair with that, a sleeve or something? What's the barrier to doing more replacement rather than, more repair rather than wholesale replacement?
Sure. So a water intrusion main replacement.
Turn your microphone up a little bit. It's just a little bit hard to hear you, or maybe can you turn it up a little bit?
Sure. Is this better?
Yeah, we just turned our volume up too.
Perfect. So a water intrusion main replacement project is because there's either a hole or a crack or some other error in the pipe, which happens with our aging infrastructure. It's the same as a leak. The difference is that water is getting into the main instead of the gas leaking out of the main. We can't line a project like that because we'd have to shut the pipe off to put a liner inside, which means we'd have to turn the customers off. Replacing the main because of the way we do it, where we would put in a new pipe and then tie it in and then move the customers over to the new pipe, results in minimal to no outage time for the customers, which is ideal now that we're in the heating season, sorry.
Normally, how long would it take you? Like, how long would a customer be without gas to do a replacement like that, or in stages? Could you do it in a day?
My understanding is that we don't always turn them off at all. Sometimes there's no interruption with the main replacement.
I'm talking about repair.
Oh, to line it? I'm not sure. We don't typically, because we don't want to turn our customers off, and I don't think we're allowed to. Tammy can correct me. We don't line smaller mains like that.
No, we normally wouldn't do any type of an outage unless we absolutely had to. In an instance, as Melissa's explaining, especially during any type of heating season. But lining, I don't believe it's possible to just do it in sections where, okay, we're doing this pipe, so numbers 1 through 10 would be off. I think it would be a whole area that would have to be off, and it may be an extensive period of time. We can ask that question, but that's not something that's normally done. That's the reason we don't know the answer.
What would be a case where you would do a replacement? I mean, a repair versus a replacement? When does that come up?
So if there was only one known area where there was an issue, then we would do a repair. But any segment where we're getting water in that main, which is why we want to replace it. But there could be multiple sources of water. So unless we dig the entire segment up to ensure we've found the issue, we won't be able to repair every issue necessarily.
Okay. I'm gonna just, I see a hand up. Margaret, I'm gonna wait for public hearing a little bit later, but I will take your comment. Councilor Laredo, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I apologize in advance. I'm going to have to head out of this meeting and go to Programs and Services for an item that on the lead docket are on shortly. But let me try to follow up, if I could, with your questions to the folks from National Grid to see if we can get some clear answers. Because I think what you're asking, Madam Chair, is why we're not considering repair over replacement. And we want to understand exact facts and figures as we make that analysis. Is that what you're driving at?
Yes, Councilor Laredo, thank you.
So let me
got that right away.
let me try to understand it and draw out a little bit here. So remind me again, what's the length of gas line that we're looking to replace?
Yes.
Tammy, do you have that?
Yeah, I think it's close to 3,000 feet. All the
Okay,
whole thing.
so that would affect how many houses?
I'll ask the engineers if they can answer that. I don't know how many.
I mean, 5, 50, 100, just the ballpark, so we know what we're talking about in terms of magnitude.
I believe the abutter list was attached to the original request. I don't have it in front of me to tell you exactly how many residences would be involved.
Someone's raising their hand saying 6. 60. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm trying to understand the magnitude. So you don't have any idea?
It's about one.
It's got to be a few dozen people. It's got to be a few. I can look it up on the.
It's about a mile. It's about 1.6 miles of pipe that we're describing.
Okay, so we're talking a substantial number of households that would be affected by any kind of outage. All right.
Correct.
And you're saying that you have no idea where the leak is, or you suspect there's a leak in one place, but it could be in others. What's the exact issue?
So we suspect there's multiple locations. The primary reason we'd replace a pipe like that is that repairing one spot only makes that one spot now failure resistant. And the whole rest of that 3,000 feet is still old pipe with the same possible issues that could come up. So fixing one issue doesn't make the rest of the pipeline good. It makes that one spot
Yeah,
good.
look, I get from National Grid's perspective, it's just easier and better to replace the pipe at once. It's a one and done. You're not gonna come back there for the next 30, 40, 50 years. Makes sense to me. On the other hand, what I'm hearing from folks who are concerned about our continued reliance on gas, particularly for heating, is that we're spending a lot of, because we ultimately paid for this, are spending a lot of money on replacement when repair might cost far less, at least on an incremental basis. So I'm trying to, do you have an idea do you know that it's leaking in multiple places? Do you have a reasonable good faith belief that it is, or you just think?
I
can
don't
speak-
have that information. Oh, go ahead,
I can
Tammy.
speak to some of that, sir. On Paulson Road, there's been multiple houses that report poor pressure. For instance, 99 Paulson Road has been one of the biggest issues. And between February 20th and March 1st, there were 4 calls for poor pressure, meaning their gas wasn't coming in. So putting their stove, their heat on was
Sure.
non-functional. During that period, National Grid went out there, pumped the drip to clear the services. Additionally, April 8th, May 2nd, September 22nd, December 25th were all more calls of poor pressure, meaning they were having trouble. There's water getting in either to the gas main or the actual service.
At that location, ma'am, or elsewhere on the road?
Within that area, the Paulson Road area, number 99 has had a lot of calls themselves.
How many other calls have you received from other locations?
I don't have each address itemized.
Are there 6 addresses, 50 addresses? I'm just trying to get some sense here.
Yeah, there are 90 abutters, by the way.
Thank you.
Our committee clerk just gave me that information.
All right, so, but
I guess what we're trying to get at, Councilor Laredo and I, is how these decisions are made. And are you being thoughtful about ways to actually repair and reduce the costs to Newton's ratepayers? Because we've been very concerned about the GSEP program, which puts all the costs onto ratepayers, and it's looking to be as much as $40 billion in putting in all new pipe that at some point we hope to not use anymore, because we have a climate action plan, as does the city of Boston, as does the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to get off fossil fuels. So we would like these things to be looked at very, very carefully, repair versus replacement. There's obviously a very strong incentive to just replace all the pipes. And we want to get more information about how that's made, especially since we have many leaks in the city, as you know. And so, of course, we're concerned when you're doing a wholesale major project with pipes that don't leak methane.
No, the gas is not leaking out, but the water is getting in. That's the reason
Here.
for the water intrusion problem in this area, correct? What we've tried to do is be proactive when there's a forecast of rain or snow or any type of weather event. Our technicians go pump out anything that's dripping, watch for blockages, and remove anything we can to avoid the customers in this vicinity having poor pressure. But this is going to continue. As more water gets in and this is more frequent, this is going to be the rule of thumb.
Councilor Chair Leary, can I just follow up quickly?
Yes, and then I'd like to get to Councillor Kalis.
I'll be very quick. Ma'am, we're not suggesting that we do not aid the residents of our city to make sure that they have an adequate supply of gas and adequate gas pressure. There's no question that work needs to be done and needs to be done promptly. The only question we're trying to understand is, are we better off from a financial perspective and an environmental perspective to do a repair versus a replacement? And I'm having a hard time understanding the analysis that you're doing to come to the conclusion that it should be a replacement, other than this is really old and we might have multiple places where there's water intruding. So I'll leave it at that and go to let Councillor Kalis go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Laredo. Councillor Kalis?
So I'm just in many ways reiterating what Councilor Laredo was just saying, and I'm kind of interested in having you walk us through how you identify a leak initially, and then how you then look at the pipe and understand if there are more leaks, or if you don't actually do that, if there's no way to do that. And if there's no way to do that, let us know. I mean, I think you see so many people here because we're all concerned about repair versus replace and the long-term consequences. So I think even if we can understand from your perspective how it's done, and I don't want the technical details, but are you actually looking at the full pipe? And I mean, that one example I thought was a good example. There was low pressure, but that is, that I guess that could be for a variety of reasons, not just a leak. So how do you look at these pipes? How do you evaluate these pipes to understand if there's intrusions or leaks?
So if there was an outage call, we would go to that individual customer's residence. And in this instance, they went, and when they found that they had no gas, they did various investigations. But the result from that particular spot was that they found water. So that means water is getting into the main. As you know, water is a lot harder to detect. So for a water intrusion project, we don't necessarily know, unless we've seen it, which I'm not aware we have on this, where the water is entering the pipe. So without fully digging up the pipe to investigate its condition and where the water is coming from, we wouldn't be able to confirm that. And if we're going to dig up the whole pipe, then the cost of the repair versus replace becomes kind of negligible.
Okay.
Digging
So
up the whole pipe is the big cost. But
Yeah.
a leak is a different case. Like a leak, we survey, we're tracking them, we keep data on them, we pick replacements due to condition based on leak history and current leak information, as well as any third-party planned activities.
Okay, so that's helpful because that just tells us there's actually no way, there's no technology that can see through the earth to the pipe to understand if where the leak is exactly and if there are more leaks. So that doesn't exist yet. So this is just one example. I guess the question is, anytime we have intrusion, are we just going to knee-jerk reaction to replace because we can't see the others? Or is there anything that you're doing to be able to actually look through the earth and understand better what's going on with the pipes? Or are we, is this how we have to proceed?
I mean, as an engineer, I would say my preference is that we would replace any pipe we know water is going into, because that is the best way to seal the water out of the pipe. Once we get into the winter season, we've been lucky that it's been warm, but typically in January, it's pretty chilly. So if water pulls into the gas line, then it could pull into a customer's residence. It could freeze, it could pull into your heating equipment. It could ruin all of the equipment, which
Right.
would be terrible.
But I'm just talking about there is no technology on the horizon that you might know of that would help us here.
Not that I'm aware of, but we do have an R&D department, and it's likely that they're looking into.
Yeah, okay. I mean, this is helpful, Chair. I just think I'm asking these questions because this is definitely going to be something that comes up over time often, I would think. And there's no, there's absolutely, it seems like there's no technology on the horizon that can help us with this. We're kind of stuck here.
The age of the pipe that's in existence in Paulson Road area is approximately, the range is from 1936 to 1953. And the material is cast iron and bare steel. It's worn down just from the age of it. So having it have cracks or holes where water is getting in is not uncommon. Unfortunately, we inherited this infrastructure.
Okay, so that's interesting. So if we're able to understand the age of the pipes throughout our city, we might be able to target those areas to say, hey, we better switch off away from gas, or we're going to run into this problem again. So that could be something that we do, but that's long term, or it's actually not long term. It's something that we initiate now. Do you have that type of data, like the age of all of our pipes around our city, or do we have that?
When we apply for any grant of location, all that information is included, what's present there and what we're planning to replace it with.
Let me ask that to Mr. Daglian. Do you know the age of the pipes around our city?
Farm Road, we don't have a real good idea, but we know most of the infrastructure is over 80 to 100 years old, so it's problematic throughout the city.
Okay, I guess this is kind of going off topic here. I'm sorry, Chair, but I think we should follow up with Mr. Daglian and understand if we can prioritize the different gas lane lines that we have, and start really interacting with our residences, to our constituents, to let them know this is a possibility and we're not looking to replace anymore.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kalis. I think we do need to better understand the whole level of criteria on how a decision is made to replace a pipe versus repair, how the pipes are monitored, how the leaks are monitored, and all this data is needed to prioritize the pipes that do really need to be repaired and replaced and replaced more quickly versus infrastructure that may be able to be repaired. So I have Councillor Crossley, followed by Councillor Gamber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, everybody. So I have a quick question, and then I'd like to follow up on some of the things that Councillor Kalis was talking about, because clearly we're not getting anywhere if we don't have a citywide plan. But the first question is specific. When you're deciding whether or not your sewer or water line to your house, say, is in good enough condition to keep, or whether you need to replace it or whether you can line it, we can TV the line. There is technology to do that. Can you tell me why you can't do that on a gas line?
We can, but if the pipe is too small, it may require us to shut off the customers to do so.
Well, these are all at least 4-inch diameter pipes, which is pretty much what a service line to the house is, a water line.
Yep.
So you could
Some
TV
of
the
it,
line
yeah,
to, I'm sorry, to figure out if there are leaks in the line or cracks or whatever. It's a fairly inexpensive thing to do relative to digging up the entire pipe. I want to understand why that couldn't be a technique that would be used. Because, as Councillor Laredo, his line of questioning seemed to me, you will only have identified a leak on one of the streets in question here, Paulson Road, and maybe not even more than one of the addresses, at least that you've only cited one address. And it just seems to me that we would want to, before replacing this rather vast area of fairly recent pipes, seems to me you would really like to know their condition. Now, I could be wrong, but you've got you're also sometimes replacing it with a larger pipe, which is confusing to me. Could you please explain why we need to replace a smaller pipe? The neighborhood's been developed for a very long time. These neighborhoods, a lot of them were developed in the 1950s. Why would you need to replace the gas line with a larger pipe?
Regarding size increases, so when we refer to a pipe size, we're referring to a nominal size. 4-inch is what is out there now, and we're requesting to put in 6. A 4-inch cast iron main has a 4-inch internal diameter, but a 4-inch plastic main, 4 inches the outside of the main, inside of the main is it's 3.6 inches. So if we put in a 4-inch plastic main where a 4-inch cast iron main is, we will reduce the capacity and pressure in the system, which would negatively impact the customers. So we have to go to the next size to continue to maintain our capacity.
One more sort of technical question, just because I didn't understand the answer earlier. When there's a weather event pending, somebody said, I think it was the other person who's been speaking, and I'm sorry, I don't have your name, your identification, something like Seaport iPad or something. But, that you try to be proactive, somehow clearing the line. How do you do that?
This is for a water intrusion. We know if it's going to rain heavily or snow, and we know there's water getting in either the service line that goes to the homes or the gas main. The technicians pump the water out of the line.
And exactly how do you do that?
I have never done it myself. They have equipment that's specifically what it's for. And having water intrusions, again, is not uncommon. We had one not too long ago on Hartman Road last February, and we emergency replacement because several people lost appliances. There was one gentleman whose entire furnace was ruined from the water and the amount of times it kept intruding, and gas metering and all of that had to get done. And we had to put in a claim and go through all that because the water just kept coming in.
Well, I'm sympathetic to situations like that, and that repairs need to be done. I guess I'll ask the question more specifically. In order to pressurize the line, in order to get water out, are you raising the pressure of the gas, and does that have any side effects?
No, they're pumping the water out, to my knowledge. That's all they're doing. And
But
making sure there's no blockage.
Okay, I don't know if somebody else later on can address this who maybe understands, but it's like, what fluid are they using to pump the water out? Is it a gas?
I believe it's a vacuum.
It's a vacuum.
Yes.
So there
it's a
are-
So it's
pump.
not a pumping it out. Okay, so it's like a sucking thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That helps. Okay, and then picking up on Councilor Kalis's comments, we were able to do this for ourselves in the city of Newton when we had to begin a massive and aggressive rehabilitation program of our water and sewer lines. So we know it can be done where if the gas company is willing to share their information, we can look at the age and materiality of the pipe throughout the city. We've learned from our water sewer work, for example, we understand that the thickness of the metal pipes was much less during World War II. So sometimes those pipes have to be relined in the case of sewer, or replaced sooner than some of the older pipes, which happen to be large, thicker. But the point being, if we had this information, in this case, we could have an intelligent discussion about how to move through the city. Because the other thing that's going on is that we have massive methane leaks in some parts of the city that we'd like to see taken care of first, because it's we'd like to detoxify our air in our city, and you notice gas leaks as you're walking down the street. I happen to live in the Upper Falls section where you replaced a lot of the pipe. There, actually, it made sense to me because our pipes are well over 100 years old, and we used to walk down the street and smell gas all the time. Like, just walk your dog around the street, inhale the methane. But that's not what we're talking about here. And I think that's why a lot of people are really concerned about the prioritization of this work. That's enough for me for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Crossley. That sort of begs the question of why there's so much being replaced here and not just Paulson Road, whereas the only area that you've identified that there's actually water intrusion. So I'm going to leave that out, and I'm going to go on to Councilor Danberg, followed by Councilor Norton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of the questions that I would have asked have already been asked, so I won't go over them again. And I would like to just say that my thoughts are in sync with the people from the committee who have spoken before. We understand that we have 700 plus gas leaks in the city. Does that number coincide with the number that that you have? And do you know, in fact, how many gas leaks we have in the city?
Tammy, are you able to answer that question? Or is that something for John Daglian?
No, I can ask for an updated count from our gas operations group. I know we recently, in conjunction with the commissioner, have repaired 15 grade 3 significant impact leaks. A list he had sent us in October, and they've all been repaired.
Those
So
are significant environmental impact leaks?
SEI leaks, yep,
Okay.
yep.
How many level 3 leaks have you identified in the city?
I don't have a total number off the top of my head. I can get back to you with that information.
I think Heat has that information too. I hope they
Believe so.
Yes.
Okay, but are we talking about 10% of the 700 or 25%? Can you give us a ballpark? I'm asking to know what the what the level of emergency is here.
I'm going to look it up for you, Councilor Danberg.
Just to be clear, excuse me, the level 3 leaks are the
lowest.
The lowest leaks.
Least concerns. Yes.
Least concern.
All right,
Yep.
Sorry then, level 1. But
Emergency grade
we
1
just
leaks.
heard that 15 level 3 leaks were fixed. So I don't think they're going after the lowest level leak. Is that correct? You're
Grade
not
1 leaks,
repairing the
grade 1 are
lowest
the
level
highest
leak? You're going after the
emergency
highest level leak? And is there a difference? Grade 1 or the highest?
Grade 1 are the highest, and that's an emergency. We would not, if there's a grade 1 leak, we do not leave until it's repaired. If it takes 3 days of shifts around the clock, they stay till it is repaired.
Okay, so there are no grade 1 leaks that you know about in the city
We have
right now?
about 2
No.
to 3 a week, Councilor Danberg, according to the fire department. They're chronic, they're ongoing. They happen with significantly shocking frequency. Grade
Yeah.
1, highly explosive, immediate, very dangerous.
Yes. That's,
So
that's,
plan, the environmental plan that we have for the city, its goal is to get off of fossil fuel, as our chairman has said, and it looks like we're in a dilemma here, because if the ratepayer has to pick up the tab for the replacement, there is really no incentive to spend less if that would be spent on repair, nor is there an incentive to wean ourselves from gas if that is the case on the part incentive on the part of the gas company. We also know there have been articles in the newspapers recently about children with asthma who have gotten much better when the families have gotten off of gas and gone on to some other form of electric cooking and heating. So we do need the gas company, to understand that it is our goal and our plan to wean ourselves from fossil fuel. So I think we need to have serious discussion about what kind of plan we're going to have for the city as far as what needs to be repaired and replaced, and how we're going to go about weaning ourselves off. And I know that's not what the gas company's goal, I guess, would be. So in a sense, the goal of the city and the goal of the gas company are not in sync entirely. And I'm going to leave it there because the questions that I had have been answered, and I'd like to hear what my colleagues have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Danberg. I just want to reiterate the point that Councillor Crossley made about having a citywide plan. I think that's an extremely important point. We did an extensive 20-year plan for our water sewer, which is on track. We've seen great improvements getting them fixed. And for me, I would like to see a very similar citywide plan to evaluate our gas mains, make decisions about repair versus replacement based on real safety issues and the effort to reduce methane and for triage and repair. That's what I would like to see. Right now, I'm going to recognize Councillor Norton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was looking at the letter that the Gas Leaks Allies, I know they go by a different name now, had sent to the to the governor-elect. That was in our packet, and I just this sentence made me want to ask you all a question while we have you here. The current system for calculating gas company rates and profitability is strongly weighted in favor of capital investments that pay for themselves over decades. That system is sending the wrong message to all of the gas companies. It burdens the Commonwealth and ratepayers with stranded assets, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a difference in compensation reimbursement to National Grid if you choose replacement over repair?
Sounds like a question for Tammy, but that may be above her pay grade. I don't know. It's a good question, but that.
I'm just wondering if that we know that it's quite lucrative for the electric and gas utilities to invest in transmission and infrastructure, and that was something that was established decades ago in order to promote reliability and sort of belts and suspenders. But it's just not meeting our, so I think the last I looked into was like 10 to 14% rate of return on infrastructure versus 5% rate of return on energy efficiency. So I'm just wondering if there is a financial angle here that sort of underlaying this that we're just not that isn't explicit.
Councillor Norton, if I could just weigh in here, to be fair, that wasn't one of the questions we submitted to National Grid for this evening. And I'm really trying to focus on how we evaluate repair versus replacement, specifically for Paulson Road. But we also, as you know, have another major project grant of location here tonight too for the first time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And if they're not, if this shouldn't be addressed tonight, but I think if that's the case, that there's a strong financial incentive to replace over repair, well, then that would be really important information for us to have.
I think that's the elephant in the room, and I think multiple studies have shown that to be the case. GSEP clearly incentivizes replacement versus repair. And now looking back 8 years after it was implemented with all good intentions to fix leaks and, help, protect the trees that were dying from the methane, we realize that it's sort of now it's a process that's run amok. However, I see, Tammy has her hand up. Please go ahead. Tammy, you might be muted. I'm not hearing anything. Did we lose Tammy?
We just had her, we lost her previously. I don't see her on the screen anywhere.
Tammy, I think we lost you. So I'm going to go to Councilor Norton. If you're done, I'd like to go to Councilor Kelly.
Yep, all set. Thank you.
Councilor Kelly.
Thank you. Boy, this looks like the standard kind of request application we get all the time, but as this meeting goes on, I'm increasingly uncomfortable with the answers we're hearing. I feel like there's a lack of knowledge or a withholding of facts, and I don't know which. I'm becoming more and more interested in this as we try and align our climate action goals with the petitions that come before us. Things are, for me, getting murkier and murkier. I feel like the questions that, say, Councilors Kalis, Laredo, and Crossley asked earlier were not being fully answered. And part of me feels badly for National Grid and for Tammy here, who's very much put on the spot to answer questions that perhaps she's not prepared to do or enabled to do. And it's causing me a lot of hesitation and lack of faith in moving forward to vote in a positive way on this. Because this is a public hearing, also, I'm very interested, before I make any vote or determination, on hearing from the public, because I see on the screen so many of our colleagues who I respect and who know so much more than me about this. So I'm very eager to hear what some of them have to say, but I did want to express my increasing concern over what I'm hearing tonight and the direction I fear we may be heading in by doing the same old. So Chairman Leary, I'm sure you'll open it up soon. And I, for one, and I think all of us very much look forward to hearing from people who are here, who have some stuff to tell us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Kelly. I'd like to open it up. It is a public hearing. I'd like to open the public hearing. Please raise your hand. Or you can wave frantically through the window if you're not sure, but I think everybody here I've seen on Zoom before. I'm going to start with Bob Persons. Please just state your name and address. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Bob Persons at 2396 Com Ave in Newton, Auburndale, actually. First question that comes to mind of several is, how do we know if we replace all this pipe that the leak isn't actually coming from somewhere upstream? For instance, there's a grade 3 leak pending at 442 Chestnut Street, which is right around the corner from Paulson. And then we know if gas can get out there, water can probably get in. And I know that that address is uphill from most of Paulson. Or how do we know that the intrusion isn't coming from one of the, I think, about 51 service lines that are connected to the segment of pipe that's covered in the grant of location request?
Ms. Owens, are you able to speak to that?
Not specifically. They would have investigated every drip location. So on the aging infrastructure, there are what we call drip pots, which is the spots where we pump, we say pump, but we vacuum out the water. So they would have investigated all of the ones in the area to determine the scope of this individual job. So if they did not try to extend all the way to Chestnut, my understanding is that would mean that the drips along Chestnut were dry, indicating that that is not the source of the water.
I would also like to add that with the situation and the poor pressure and the water that has already happened at Paulson Road, because of that area continually having water, they've had some poor pressure reports within some of the homes around Evelyn Road as well. And this water intrusion is, as we've described it, a safety problem with the water getting in either the gas line or the main, and it will consistently continue because the ability to keep clearing it is all we can do to prevent it from happening, which we're not preventing. We're just trying to prevent it from getting further down the line into the individual's homes and appliances and furnaces and causing damage because it's not gas to their furnaces, etc. I apologize. I got kicked off a couple of times. I don't know what's going on with my internet. I jumped back in, but I did want to, I had my hand up to give some information with regard to the comment made as to why doing replacement is more beneficial than leak repair. I do have some information if you'd like me to do that, or you want me to wait till later.
No, please go ahead.
So the primary purpose of replacing leak-prone pipe is to improve safety and to reduce the risks associated with a gas main breakage, similar to when water mains break. So repairing leaks does not reduce the risks, and it's not a substitute for pipe replacement that's necessary to ensure the integrity of the gas system and ensure public safety. The average cost per mile of pipe replacement is currently about $3 million. The average cost of a leak repair is about $6,000. Cast iron pipe has a joint about every 12 feet, which would require sealing to fix current leaks and prevent future leaks. So replacing 1.6 miles of pipe would cost approximately $4.8 million, which would eliminate all leaks, prevent future leaks, and reduce the risk of a catastrophic event caused by a main breaking. Repairing all the current leaks and preventing future leaks would cost an estimated $4.2 million, but that does not reduce the safety risk. So therefore, pipe replacement is a more efficient solution to address both leaks and improve the system's safety.
Okay, thank you for that information. I'm not sure that math adds up, but it seems to me that replacement then is never something you're going to do. Are you just saying that right now it makes sense just to do replacement and not really investigate the option of repair? Because it doesn't make sense from what you just said.
Well, and that information was replacement as a whole, not only in a water intrusion situation. If you've got an excess of leaking pipe where, and all of this is documented too, is if there's consistently grade 1 leaks, we test all the way down, and the areas that we come to the town and say, we need to do main replacement, it's prioritized on a list because it's been tracked and documented over time. What we don't want to happen is for a gas main to break. Putting the public at risk is not anything anybody wants. That's why with a grade 1 leak or a severely leaking area, we recommend main replacement because that's going to solve the problem in a longer stretch.
It just seems, Tammy, that we have just as many leaks as before. We don't seem to be catching up on the leaks, and you can't swing a cat in Newton without smelling methane. There's a leak right at Newtonville Ave and Walnut Street that's pretty overwhelming, and it's been there for years. So how are we catching up on leaks? Because it seems like we're not at all, that it's a constant game of whack-a-mole.
Oh, no, it definitely is. I completely understand the frustration because let's put it this way, if a grade 3 leak is monitored and worsens, it becomes a 2, and then it becomes a 1. And we have the second oldest infrastructure in the United States. The first oldest is in Maryland. So we inherited what's in the ground and what we're trying to maintain and repair and keep people safe where they have the ability to still use it. At this point, that's really all we have. I mean, ideally, net zero and going forward, fossil-free vision, all of that. Yes, we all want it, but it's not going to happen overnight.
No, but we do want to have a plan. I'm going to go to Councilor Crossley. She had her hand up, and then I'm going back to the public. I'm going to go to Mike and then to Carol Wine. So Councilor Crossley, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to try and say this in my own words so I understand the case study that National Grid ran some numbers on. You're saying that for some size pipe, for 1.6 miles, a total replacement cost is $4.8 million. You're saying that for the same 1.6 miles, if there's a joint every 12 feet, because it's all metal pipe, the cost would be $4.2 million if you repaired it every 12 feet. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to, just a quick anecdote. Route 9 in Newton is about 12 miles long. Or I'm sorry, it's about, how many miles is it? It's about 4 miles long. It was $12 million that was spent on MassWorks money to repave that road. I'm forgetting now, I think 9 or 10 years ago. It's constantly being dug up every 12 feet. Throughout the entire time it's been paved, particularly between Wellesley, Needham, and Newton along the western section of Route 9. They're not replacing the pipe. They're just digging it over and over and over. They're out there tonight. They were out there last night and every day this week and last week. So I'm not understanding the relation, like, and we smell methane walking along Route 9. So something's really not making sense to me. And again, in terms of how these pipes are being prioritized, I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you, Councilor Crossley. I see Mike. Mike, could you please give your full name and your address, please?
Yeah, it's Mike Vahey. I have properties at Elliott Street, 2729 Elliott. I guess the only reason I'm on this call is because I received a letter, and but I'm listening on this call and it's kind of nuts. It seems like National Grid wants to come in and fix problems, and I've heard nothing but like a half hour of like, you know, them almost little crazy questions, asking them why they want to fix a problem and what they're doing about problems. I appreciate the people who are on here from National Grid, because it must be very difficult to listen to this, because it's difficult as a citizen to listen to this. I mean, we rely on this for heat, we rely on this for cooking, we want to know that it's safe, and we appreciate that National Grid is out there all times of the night doing this work. And so to hear all this stuff about why are you not replacing it, why are you not fixing it, you know, this is it's just seems ridiculous. I would think that they were the experts about what should happen with our gas service than anyone, you know, from the city. So I would hope that, like, we're not giving them mixed messages to just stop doing projects and stop addressing things by saying, hey, like, there's climate change and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I just think it's not productive. And so, as far as I'm concerned, if they want to go and dig up Elliott Street and replace a 100-year-old pipe, God, go with them. Let them do it. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Mike, thanks for your comments. Of course, we do want them to do the work that needs to get done. We're just working on better understanding the priorities in context of the situation we find ourselves in. And we do very much appreciate National Grid being here and taking the time to answer these difficult questions. I agree, it's not easy, but thank you for your comments. Carol Ween.
Hi, I'm Carol Ween. I live at Mary Ellen Road, and my street is not one of the ones listed in the letter, but I thought I would give a little bit of input what's gone on our street for at least the past 3 years, and hopes that the residents will hear what's happened here and allow them to dig up their streets and replace the main. Because I have been without heat at least 7 to 9 times in the last 3 years on the coldest days. I've had to buy emergency electric heaters. We've had to borrow them around our neighborhood. At least half our street has been without heat because the water has leaked from the main into our gas meters. I've had a new gas meter replaced at least 4 times in the last 2 months because there was ice in it and the gas stopped. It's a critical problem. Every problem needs to be looked at in the city of where we're spending or wasting money. But as someone who has done without heat in the coldest, it is not a waste of money. And I just hope people realize that their potential is the same as ours has been, and they're getting close to hooking us up to the main, and I can't wait.
Ms. Ween, what street did you say you lived on?
Mary Ellen Road.
Mary Ellen Road, okay.
And they have been out here for hours and days on end, pumping water from people's meters, replacing meters at all hours of the night. The supervisors have been attentive to it. And when you're freezing cold at 2 a.m. and they get here at 2:30, that's pretty good.
Yep, it is. We don't want people to go without heat, believe me.
Well, it's been way too many times. So I would
Well, that
caution
speaks to a larger
any.
problem, I think.
Thank you for the chance to address that.
Thank you for attending. Ms. Goldberg, followed by Mr. Phillips. Ellie, you're muted.
Yep. Okay, Ellie Goldberg, 79 Elmore Street, Newton Center. I made a few notes as people were talking, and I just want to say that our goal is not to leave anybody out in the cold. It's to avoid National Grid's costly crisis management approach to gas pipeline problems. We are encouraging the city and National Grid to adopt a planned preventative approach to caring for and in managing our extremely leaky 305 miles of old pipes. There are many very old pipes all over the city. And if we had a plan, if we had a map, we could prioritize. All the leaks are dangerous, polluting, and wasteful. And National Grid charges customers for the lost gas. And they also make a profit on pipeline replacement. A lot of people don't know that they are paying for the lost gas, which is about 8% or more of the city's emissions. Now, I just wanted to clarify that the SEIs, the grade 3 significant environmental impact leaks, are the high volume leaks. They're not the grade 1 level explosives because they're not in confined spaces. But some of these have been leaking for years. I saw a few that were 2004 when they were first reported, and we're all paying for that besides driving the climate crisis. So we know that there are less costly, safer, more reliable and efficient methods for repairing many of the leaks to assure reliable gas service until we can start retiring the pipes. We need transparency. We need a plan so we can prioritize. We don't want anyone out in the cold, or suffering from lack of gas, but we don't need the gas to have the comfort of home and to cook our food. So instead of allowing National Grid to extend long-term dependence on gas by unnecessary pipeline expansions, we're encouraging the city to work with National Grid on a plan for triage and repair while planning to retire the gas systems. It may be more efficient and practical to switch people to electrify, to give them, electric appliances and cut the gas off. We're asking for some cost comparisons so we can really plan a transition to non-emitting, non-combustible clean energy, for the climate that we're trying to preserve. The extreme weather is a challenge. The ground under our streets and under our homes is, some of it is in wetlands and the water table is changing. It doesn't make sense to keep the gas under our streets. And I just want, we have some very detailed questions, but I think I'd like to pass the mic to Nathan, who is more technical about some of these leaks, because we don't want to, prevent National Grid from doing the job. But when we're talking about safety, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of leaks. And I don't know how they prioritize Paulson Street over any of the others. The pipes on Morseland on my corner are over 100 years old, and they just repaired a leak the other day. So how they make decisions, how they prioritize, how they decide how one block is going to be safer than the next one. I'd love to have an open discussion at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldberg. Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, thank you. Nathan Phillips. I live in Auburndale, and I want to just thank the committee and chair for representing your constituents. And I think that Newton is really stepping up. And I think a lot of other cities and towns across Massachusetts that are grappling with very similar issues are looking to the leadership that our city council is showing. And every comment I heard from the councilors today, all of them were really reasonable and just excellent, focused questions trying to find constructive solutions. So just really appreciating that. I have so many questions, and this meeting could go on for hours. It's been a fascinating disclosure of things that seem to raise even more questions than they answer. Like, it seems that we know where the gas is dripping. We know the spatial place where they're dripping, but we also don't, I heard that we don't know where the actual water intrusion is happening. And that, is it the case that meters are freezing above ground? And if that's where the symptoms are showing up and the failure is happening, what could be done there? I'm a gas customer for National Grid, and our meter is inside the house, inside the basement. And so it's not subjected to those freeze thaw conditions in which moisture could maybe condense. Is that the problem? Are there little robots, these little CISBots that can crawl through 4-inch pipe and investigate where the problem is? What are the technologies that are available? Is the pressure increasing? How much is the pressure going to be increased? Will that increase leaks downstream? Because pressure increase should increase every other leak on the system. Hydrogen. When will hydrogen start to be blended into the gas lines, which National Grid has, in some audiences, disclosed that that's the plan to increase hydrogen? Hydrogen has so many problems, and the residents on any street that's getting a new replaced pipeline that they're intending to start blending hydrogen, they need to know about that, because they need to know what the impacts indoor are going to be, because combusting hydrogen produces oxides of nitrogen, which are bad for respiratory health. So the timeline of the hydrogen blending that they're intending to do in these projects with these pipes needs to be disclosed, and the residents need to be prepared, because at some point they'll have to change their appliances, like their stoves, to mitigate the increased pollution caused by burning hydrogen inside. So that's like a laundry list of questions, and I don't even know where to start. But I would like to know, that from the very first September meeting, there was a request for costing analysis. We've heard a little bit of that, which surprises me that the costing for a repair versus a replace would be very nearly the same when one of National Grid's companies that they work with that does lining of the same size of pipe that is being considered for this 1.6 miles says that it's like 50% cheaper to do it with lining. And the repairs that are stated, like every 12 feet, you would do and add up $6,000 a pop for every 12 feet. That doesn't seem to be what would, like with the lining technology, which National Grid has published their own paper in 1995 on. There needs to be more discussion about what their options are that may be lower cost and just as effective and safe as pipeline replacement. Their own studies have shown this. And I think I'd like to know if they can acknowledge the 1995 Bonner paper written by Boston Gas Company that touted the benefits of lining in the same size cast iron pipe that they are proposing to do for this 1.6 miles in Newton. So I could keep going, and I'll just kind of stop there. And any one of those questions that could be answered would be great. And there's even more, but I'll pause.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. I'm going to suggest that we keep a list of those questions, and maybe we could send them to NGrid and ask for written responses. We've been talking on this one item for over an hour now, and we're not going to be able to get all the questions answered this time. So if Tammy wants to if she has a burning response that she would like to share with us now, I'm happy to hear her response.
I completely agree that putting a list together of the various questions, because I'm far from the complete gas expert. The numbers I stated to you guys were from our Director of Regulatory Gas Operations. So they had the question, they gave me information. I did not calculate that. What's behind it and how it's done is all in accordance with what's used as far as state and federal regulators and things like that. I don't see all those miscellaneous items. The one thing I urge is for Paulson Road being a water intrusion and a safety issue, to allow the grant location so that we can get this work done and these residents within that vicinity are not subjected to what the other woman on Mary Ellen Road, that's the one I was describing that happened earlier this year, where a lot of people were very inconvenienced. We had to put emergency design information together to be able to do that. So it didn't start till later than it should have. I would not like to see that same situation occur in Paulson and Evelyn and that whole area that we're looking at on this grant location. We've been lucky it's been warmer, but with the colder temperatures and freezing situations or a lot of precipitation, it's just going to prohibit and encourage the water to get intrusion it's going to intrude more and further.
Thank you,
Can I
Tam.
follow?
We understand your concern about about this particular granted location. But I did want to make sure we get a comprehensive list of questions so that I want to be clear. We want to work with you. We want to better understand the plan. We want to see a plan. We want to understand how decisions are made. And we are working towards moving away from fossil fuels. And I don't think necessarily that's something National Grid is interested in doing. We have concerns about hydrogen and green methane as well. And these are above and beyond this grant of location. And so we'll need to have this a further discussion. And I do appreciate very much that you did come here this evening to talk to us about this, and also with your engineers, Melissa, and I think there's another engineer we haven't heard from. I don't know if he's on here. So I do appreciate that. We want to be, we're looking for more transparency and a better understanding so that we can also, we're responsible for our Newton residents who are footing the bill for this. And that is deeply concerning as well. But of course, safety and having heat in the winter are absolutely essential. I'm going to continue with the public hearing. And I just want to say, we do have one other question we haven't discussed yet, and that was the impact on the opening of streets on the public and abutters and the length of time and how impactful this would be. And I believe that was something Councillor Gentile had mentioned. And I just wanted to, is Councillor Gentile on the call tonight? I thought he was, but. Okay, so apparently he's not on tonight. So I'm going to go continue with the public hearing with Ms. Alperstein, followed by Mr. Barr.
Thank you, Chair Leary. I think it's a little bit frustrating for some of us to have the kind of opacity continue in terms of specific answers. And tonight is another night where I personally feel that questions are not being answered. And while I totally respect the people who are here to answer for National Grid, it is perplexing to me why these questions cannot be answered specifically with facts. And that goes to the larger question of transparency. I'm concerned that we have proposed the idea of a citywide plan as a way to mark out and be able to be proactive about what repairs need to be done. And I think we are talking about repair versus replacement right now, but what we really want is to be repairing, repairing, and then retiring the gas system. And we have an opportunity now with the change in the climate law that's taken place through DPU to be talking about network geothermal as an alternative to just replacing pipes. As we look to retire that system, we also have air source heat pumps as an alternative, whether it's house by house or block by block or 1.6 miles along a route, which is now being proposed to be replaced with pipe that might indeed be replaced with those houses having an alternative electric source or geothermal source of energy. So my question is a big question. You know, if we can map out and do a citywide plan and look at the areas where we know proactively we're going to need to do work first and foremost because they are close to, because of the extremely old pipes or because of the multiple leaks on a particular several block area, that we would be able to work with National Grid to consider these alternatives now, not in the future. We're not talking about pipe replacement for the next 70 years and then getting down to changing out the pipes. What we want to do, I think, in Newton is get off of gas as quickly as possible. And this is an opportunity to do so if we can get National Grid to really partner with us on these alternative scenarios. So it's more of a statement than a question. There are a whole bunch of questions that we have, which we'll submit, Allison, so maybe Chairman Leary, so that you can add them to your list, because I know tonight it's a long night. But it seems to me we're at that point where we need to be creative and not to find ourselves perpetually in an emergency scenario in the middle of the winter where we can't do anything else but, you know, replace 1.5 miles of pipe. So thank you for listening to my comment.
Thank you very much. We do have our commissioner, Ms. McGonigal, on tonight, as well as Associate Commissioner Shauna Sullivan. And I just want, I'm not going to put them on the spot right now, but I do want to have a further discussion about this kind of thoughtful planning. I know that the city meets with National Grid monthly, and they do discuss some planning regarding, mostly around streets that getting it done before we pave a street. So we're not pulling up newly paved streets. But I'd like to expand the discussion with National Grid to, it's been mentioned more than once this evening about a citywide plan based on real data about how we are prioritizing replacement of these pipes. And we want more information on replacement how that's possible. I just want to throw that out because that's what I've been hearing this evening. Okay, I'm going to Mr. Barr, followed by Ms. Zaleski.
Thank you, Chair Lilly. Leary, it's Peter Barrer at 60 Endicott Street. I've got two things to say. One is I trying to put myself in your position and position of public facilities. You're playing whack-a-mole. You get these requests and each one is on its own. And without the picture of a large plan, where is this all going? Who's gonna, how are we gonna afford all these replacements? And one by one, maybe this one makes sense, maybe that one makes sense, but it's not a way to do public works. It's just, this is not the way to do the work that we need to do. And so I really sympathize with the difficult position this places you in. We have people who need heat, yes. When we heard the first discussion of this in December, someone asked, well, when will this work begin? And how long will it take? And the gas company didn't answer, and they turned to a Newton, the Newton staff and said, well, you tell us. Well, if it's an emergency, I want to hear we'll be out there, in 3 weeks, and it'll be done by the end of January. And to just, pass this off to Newton staff, if it is an emergency, we want to hear about it. I just felt, it just looks like whack-a-mole to me. And I think your calling for a plan is really the only way to address this very large public investment problem. And the second point is I'm very curious to know the spec of the pipe you use. I'm an engineer. I looked up polyethylene pipe, ASTM D2513, which I think is gas pipe. And the inside diameter of a 4-inch pipe is 4 inches. So I'm very curious if you can answer, let me know, is that the spec for the pipe that you are using in your gas mains?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Barr. I do want to also touch base while we still have National Grid here and the commissioner about the length of time this work will take, because that did come up at our last discussion on this item, and it is in the list of questions for this evening. So Ms. Zaleski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with everything that's been said about needing a citywide plan. And I share the concern about not paying for a system that we're trying to and hoping to get rid of as soon as we can. I want to raise an issue that hasn't been discussed, which is the quality of life issue. I live in a house that is on what I will call, for the purposes of this call, a trapezoid, with maybe 15 houses around the trapezoid, 1, 2, 3, 4 streets. And then across the street from me is another trapezoid with maybe 20 houses on that. The streets all around our 2 trapezoids were dug up and the pipes replaced. I called the city after 6 months of waking up every morning to the sound of jackhammers, asking when they would finish. And by the time we got to month number 8, the man I was speaking to at the city, and I don't recall his name, said, well, 8 months seems sort of excessive. I'll try to get some answers for you. But prior to that, he couldn't tell me anything about why they were doing what they were doing, how long it was going to take, how much it was going to cost. On my street, which to my knowledge has never had a gas leak, They dug up in front of my house at least 6 times. And the procedure is they come in, they dig out, and then they re-asphalt before they go home that day. And then the next day they come up and they dig out again with the jackhammers, and then they re-asphalt again. And what I learned was that they were doing, building a parallel trench to the trench where the old gas pipe was. And they weren't going to remove the gas pipe. They were just going to do a parallel trench. And in front of my house, unfortunately, they came upon a lot of ledge. And so they had to bring in the big equipment. And so we had these huge machines on our street for weeks at a time with the unbelievable noise. And this was during COVID. And I myself am older and I have elderly neighbors. We're all trapped in our house. And this is going on day after day after day for 8 months. It was really unbearable. And so I think the city has an obligation not only to help us and figure out a solution so that we cannot pay as much money for a system that we don't want, but to help us improve the quality of our life. I can't believe that relining a pipe would have cost what it cost just for my house alone, this ledge in the front. You know, the aggravation, it must be quieter to reline a pipe than to dig it out a number of times. As to the end of the process, when they finally had the new pipes all working, they had to connect to our individual houses. And I know that I was without gas for, I'm going to guess, 7 hours because they had a problem and they couldn't figure it out. The people across the street in a very cold period were without gas for a long time. I don't know about the rest of the street, but it's not a smooth process. It's not a fun process. And if they come to your neighborhood, book a vacation because you'll want to go away somewhere. Thank you.
I'm so sorry, Ms. Zaleski. That really sounds like an awful and more extreme experience than most, that you had to go through that, especially during COVID. And actually, that's one of the questions that came up at our last discussion on this item was when this project would ideally start, if it was approved this evening, and how long the work would take. Because it is a big, even if it's not as extreme as Ms. Zaleski's case, it's definitely disruptive and difficult for the neighborhood. So that's probably, I'm going to throw that out to Tammy and or our own city staff who want to take a stab at that. It's reasonable information that our residents should have access to.
Oh, and I forgot one more thing. Now that my house is on the new system, based on what Nathan Phillips just said, I really want to know if there's hydrogen in these pipes. I have a kitchen stove that, believe it or not, is from the 1950s. And if it's going to have to deal with gas, with hydrogen, I want to know what danger there is for me. And I don't know if hydrogen explodes.
Yeah, that's another discussion, but there is no hydrogen in our pipes yet now. That's something that's been proposed.
And will we be notified if there is?
Of course, you'd need new equipment for hydrogen. That's my understanding. I'm still learning more about it.
And will National Grid be paying for that?
I don't know, but that will be another discussion. But I would like to get back to this specific item, this grant of location regarding the scope of work and how long it's going to take.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Another grant of location to discuss tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
So a definite start date would obviously be discussed and agreed upon with the city and the Public Works Group. But the estimated duration for this kind of a project is 3 to 3.5 months. Now, normally the way it works with a grant of location, sometimes there's a 20 days after the grant is approved, we're allowed to start if everyone's in agreement with that, because we do a butter notices and give out information. Now, that timeline is assuming there are no setbacks or issues, unknown issues, similar to what the young lady just explained. Running into ledge can cause delays. If there would be an unidentified culvert, unmarked drain or utility lines, things that can cause delays. So that's why I say an estimated duration.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McGonigal or Ms. Sullivan, would you be able to give us an idea of when this time, possible timeline of when this project would start?
Sure, Madam Chair. Obviously, it has to go to council vote. Then there is the 20-day waiting period. We have been allowing National Grid to work throughout the winter, which many communities don't. We hadn't historically, but in an effort to try to move these repairs and work along, we have been allowing them to work weather permitting in the winter. So that really, and again, we've had a mild winter so far. That's probably going to change if history serves us right. But again, we won't be holding that process up at all. It's just based on the weather.
Okay, so it could start in February and be completed by April if things go well.
If things go well, yes, as Tammy said, that they're anticipating 3 to 3.5 months. That's without any conflicts.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any more questions from the committee? I'm not seeing any hands. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing on this item. I'm not seeing any other member of the public with their hand up. So I'm closing the public hearing. I'd like to bring it back into committee. Does the committee feel like this is something we should approve this evening, or are there any other questions, concerns that people have? Councilor Crossley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So like most people on this, in this session tonight, I have continuing concerns about how we are prioritizing or how the gas company is prioritizing the work in our city. I appreciate very much that the folks who came in here tonight are not in a position to address most of the larger concerns that we have. A plan for the city to, prioritize the work according to the concerns that we have in terms of air quality, health, the extraordinary number of leaks we have throughout the community, just to address, and that's just to address the immediate concerns, but to address them then against the long-term concerns, which we're really barely beginning to do, and only on an individual basis. And as Peter Bearer said, this is no way to handle public works, but this is not our public works. This is beyond our control in many cases. And so again, on the other hand, I have to say I'm very concerned about the likelihood, the possibility that citizens in low-lying areas are going to suffer if we don't get this work done. I know Mary Ellen Road. It's about at the same elevation as Evelyn Road and the other roads surrounding it. They're all in the same area. And, if this has been a problem that has been evidenced over recent years, it should be fixed. And I don't think I don't feel that I have the stature or personally, I'm not an engineer. So I can't argue the approach that they're taking technically. I don't want to see people have water intruding into their gas system and freezing their equipment and so on and so on. I know from having this work done in my own neighborhood extensively, Circuit Avenue and Thurston and Columbia and all the areas in the oldest part of Newton Upper Falls. It was many, many months. I mean, this was a large area, very old area, narrow streets, close houses are close together. And it took many more than 3 to 3.5 months. Evelyn Road, Mary Ellen, those streets there, it's a 1950s development. I'm perplexed by many of the answers to many of the questions. I don't feel that we have today for this particular grant of location what we would need to say no, frankly. So I do realize that the gas company, and I'm not sure if one of the folks who's with us tonight is the liaison liaison person who meets regularly with the DPW, but I know that there is a monthly meeting, and that has helped coordinate gas work with our public works, our street work. But that's not enough. We need to begin to take steps that are bigger and more forward-looking than this. I hope that with the new administration at the State House and a new Department of Public Utilities, that there will, and pressure, because I know the pressure is coming. I know a lot of you who are here tonight are working collaboratively with other communities, raising a cry for help. Because, you know, we need this plan. It's not just Newton. It's everywhere in Massachusetts. And so somewhat with a heavy heart, but feel with a sense of responsibility, I would move approval on this particular project. Because I don't know how else to address it. I want to be responsible to our citizens. And I don't, you know, folks on folks on Mary Ellen Road have experienced freezing appliances and water meters and so forth. I do want to say that I'm struck by one factoid that Peter Bearer found. I want to get accurate information. Okay, so if you know, I'm not now. I don't believe that we need to have larger pipes to replace the smaller pipes, because if the inside diameter of a metal pipe is 4 inches, now we know that the inside diameter of the ASTM D2513 is 4 inches. I don't get it. And a fraction of an inch doesn't make that much difference if there is a fraction of an inch. So this is along the lines of what Councillor Kelly said earlier, that it's like I'm sure you're not doing this intentionally, but we feel like, you know, maybe we need it from a higher authority. We're not getting really clear answers to simple questions. Or we need an education, and maybe there's something the gas company can do to help decision makers in various communities understand how you make your decisions. But I will move approval on this item with all of that preamble.
Thank you, Councilor Crossley. I see that Ms. Owens from National Grid would like to respond.
I just wanted to note that the pipe that was referenced as 4-inch internal diameter is not the standard plastic pipe that we are using. And that while a small amount of an inch may not seem like a significant amount, when it's applied across 3,000 feet, it is substantial. And we are required by DPU rules to provide certain pressure at every customer's meter. And if we start reducing pipe sizes, we won't be able to do that. And even though it'll be a newer pipe, we'll have similar problems where people still will not be getting heat. And our goal is not to upsize and overspend. We want to provide a safe and reliable product to the customers that are using it today, even if they won't be using it in a year or 5 or 10 years.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Danberg.
Thank you. Building on what Councillor Crossley has just said, and I think she made some very good points. We've had a longer discussion today than we usually do when this type of thing comes up, because I think it's time now that we begin thinking seriously about what our short-term needs are and what our long-term needs are. And what we're thinking about here is the difference between what we need to do short term to make sure that people aren't inconvenienced, and that they're not without heat and have minor damage, and where the city needs to move in the long run. So I do not feel that we got adequate answers to the questions. I thank the gas company people for their patience and for coming, and I don't fault anyone here for the lack of information. I think that what we're looking to do is get information on a deeper level than perhaps is customary. And in the future, as Councillor Crossley said, maybe what we need is a tutorial and an education on how this all works and how it needs to work in the future so that we can achieve the goals that we as a city and Boston and Cambridge and many other communities want to achieve in weaning ourselves off of fossil fuels. So I will also vote in favor of moving forward with this project because I think we have to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I so much appreciate following Councillor Danberg on that, though I've come to a different conclusion. While we need to think to the future, we don't want to be making short-term decisions that like hurt our constituents and our fellow residents. But I don't think I will be able to vote for this tonight in all good conscience. I also very much appreciate the vast experience that Deb Crossley, former chair and fellow colleague, brings to this, but I have just come to a different conclusion. And for me, the lack of clear answers and forward-thinking policy-related stuff just will lead me to vote no on this tonight. And I just wanted to explain that to everyone. I also very much appreciate the National Grid people for being here and for withstanding the barrage of comments and complaints and questions. And I very much respect their ability to be here for us, but I just don't see a way for me to yes on this tonight. But thank you very much for giving me the chance to speak again.
Thank you very much. Is there any other councillor that would like to speak? I believe that a few councillors have dropped off, and let me check. So far, I see Councillor Crossley, Councillor Danberg, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Danberg, and myself. Is that correct?
I see.
Five?
You've Kalis and you've Norton.
Oh,
Norton and Kalis.
and Norton are here. Okay. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up. I will be abstaining on this. I am not, I'm still very troubled by it, I have to say, and I think this is a larger discussion. Okay, so why don't we, let's take a vote, an individual vote on this, okay? Call the roll.
Councillor,
This is, okay, just to be clear, this is the vote on this item, 546-22, the grant of location at Paulson Road. I'm abstaining.
Councillor Kalis,
Yes. Yay.
Councillor Kelly,
No.
Councillor Crossley,
Yes.
Councillor Norton,
No.
and Councillor Danberg.
Yes.
All right, that's everything, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 3 yeses, 2 noes, 1 abstain.
We don't have a quorum on that. There's 3 yeses.
That's a successful vote.
Okay, so it passes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's not a
Okay.
good vote, but
Got
it's
a quorum in
successful
the.
vote.
3 yeses,
2 noes.
2 noes, and 1 abstention.
Correct.
Okay, we have
that
another grant of location, which is also a public hearing. Let me read it into the record. This is 2923, Request for grant of location on Elliott Street, Boylston Street, Circuit Ave, Jocelyn Place, Francis Street, Charles Street, and Margaret Road. This is also a major project with a couple of thousand feet of replacement. So who would like to speak on this from National Grid, from the utility? Is it Mary Mulroney who's speaking to this, or Tammy, are you speaking to this?
I can introduce it. It's just National Grid respectfully requests your consent as part of a cast iron replacement program to relay approximately 1,840 feet of 10-inch cast iron dating back to 1924 and approximately 10 feet of 8-inch cast iron dating back to 1926, with approximately 1,850 feet of 8-inch plastic in Elliott Street from the existing 24-inch cast iron in Boylston Street to the new 6-inch plastic in the intersection of Circuit Ave and Elliott Street. The National Grid would like to replace 35 feet of 3-inch coated steel dating back to 1961 and approximately 300 feet of 4-inch coated steel dating back to 1961. Branched services with approximately 335 feet of 2-inch plastic to 978 Boylston Street, and replace approximately 110 feet of 4-inch bare steel dating back to 1953, and approximately 135 feet of 4-inch cast iron dating back to 1923, with approximately 245 feet of 4-inch plastic in Joslyn Place from the new 8-inch plastic in Elliott Street to the end of Main at 16 Joslyn Place, approximately replacing 220 feet of 6-inch low pressure cast iron dating back to 1924 and approximately 65 feet of 6-inch plastic dating back to 2010, with approximately 285 feet of 4-inch plastic in Francis Street from the new 8-inch plastic in Elliott Street to the end of the main at 22 Francis Street, and approximately 50 feet of 6-inch cast iron dating back to 1926, with approximately 50 feet of 4-inch plastic stub in Charles Street from the new 6-inch plastic cast iron in Elliott Street. Cut and cap the existing 6-inch cast iron in Charles and install approximately 50 feet of 4-inch plastic stub in the intersection of Elliott Street and Margaret Road from the new 8-inch plastic in Elliott Street.
Thank you very much. Is this, are these pipes leaking?
Yes, I believe they're leaking, and they're part of the cast iron
Replacement project?
replacement program. Yes,
Yeah,
there
they
are leaks
all are.
on Elliott Street. Pardon?
I think all these seem to be part of the cast iron replacement program.
Well, this one is, yes. The other one was for water intrusion.
Right.
But yes, there are leaks here.
How many leaks and what grade?
When this report was issued to me, there were I see 3 leaks that I have here. That's not saying that there couldn't be one tonight or there wasn't one that came in after this. It's to build the integrity of the system, to prevent the leaks. You know, we could have fixed leaks already on this, and then the pipe, you know, the more you dig on it, it becomes compromised.
Are these grade 3 leaks right now?
I actually don't have what grade they are in front of me. I'm going.
Are there any of significant environmental concern on this, in this area?
I don't have that listed either.
Is this increasing capacity?
No.
Okay. So I'd like to be able to have a little more information in terms of the grade of the leaks, the number of the leaks, And that would help. I mean, in terms of replacement, it would make sense to me that you would be working on the pipes that are the leakiest and the greatest methane emitters. Is that generally true?
I believe National Grid factors that in, as well as the history of the area. So like if there's a history from 5 years ago, 7 years ago, that we have multiple leaks there, then it stopped and there's now new leaks there. Everything goes into it to determine whether it needs to be replaced.
Okay.
Right, they're prioritized by the activity, by the leak activity. And there's an annual plan that our Public Works deals with the city's public works, and we present and say, this is what we're looking at and why we need to do them. And that's discussed every year.
Thank you very much. Okay, any questions from the committee? Please, if you take your hand down, if they're still up from the last discussion item. Are there any members of the committee that wish to speak on this?
I have my hand up, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Crossley. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this is my neighborhood and my ward, of course. And this is where we had all the work. We had all the work done over the last year and a half, south and west of this area. This is, which is even older than what's being described here. This is close to 100 years old in most cases, with the exception of one of the side streets, I think that was 1961. So you do walk around the block here and smell gas. Again, the Route 9, which is of course a state road, and does not, I believe, require our grant of location. I'm not sure how that works, because it's leaking continuously along Route 9. But you do smell gas in the whole area, and I will eventually move this because it's part of a larger project, and it is a really old area, and the pipes do leak. I'm surprised to hear there's only 3 known leaks, because it's pretty constant that you walk around the streets here and you smell gas. But why is Route 9 not being addressed? It's a huge main. Seems to me it could be lined. Obviously, we'd all be shut off and should be done in the summer if that were going to take place. But it's a constant source of methane. I don't know if it rises to the level of a super emitter, but it's hard to believe it doesn't. Is anybody who's here today able to address why Route 9 is not in the mix here? Or will it just happen and we won't know about it? Anyone from National
Are
Grid?
you able to answer that question? Or is there someone from the city? Is the commissioner able to have any insight on that?
I'm not aware of any upcoming work, but we can check at our monthly meeting. Be happy to do that.
That would be great, because it's a source of constant, they're constantly working out there. So in this particular case, this is not as difficult a project as working up on Upper Falls Hill was. It doesn't look like it would be as difficult a project in terms of narrow streets and old houses and so forth, or as old houses. But Elliott Street is a heavily trafficked roadway and needs to be managed really carefully. Can you please talk about the order of operations and time frame for something like this? National Grid.
Okay. So Councilor Crossley is asking for a time frame and how the impact of this project on the neighborhood. Do we have answers for that?
Well, National Grid would, if the grant was approved, would apply for a permit. The permit is subjected by the city of Newton to determine when we start. We have to provide a TMP, and time restrictions of what they want within their permit. We just can't go out there. It's the city of Newton that drives the time, drives the duration, and the police officers, everything goes
How can
along
the
with
city
the
of
permit.
Newton drive the duration? I know that the start date is unknown, but can you talk about the order of operations that National Grid would, you or one of the engineers who are here, if they're still here? I don't know if they're still here.
I don't know, what do you mean by operations?
You're not gonna have all the streets closed at the same time.
Correct,
You're not gonna do the entire length of pipe at the same time.
correct.
You're coming into Route 9, that's difficult. You're gonna be on Elliott Street, which is heavily trafficked, that's difficult. The side streets are less difficult. Can anybody talk about how you would approach this job?
I'd
This is
I'd be
where
happy
we
to
would-
touch on, I'd be happy to touch on that, Counselor.
Thanks.
So once this is approved, again, we wouldn't hold this up at all on our end. This, like the other project, would be weather permitting. Any of these projects, once they are approved and we give NGrid the go-ahead, they have to present a traffic management plan, and that is usually handled by the police in coordination with us in case we have to block roads or anything of that nature. But the police determine what roads would be closed or redirected, detoured, things of that nature. And we work with them on that with NGrid.
Are you finished, Councilor Crossley?
I'm sorry, I'm thinking, can you talk about the duration, the likely duration, assuming good weather, of this much work?
That would have to be NGrid. Again, we don't determine the duration at all. The only thing that would hold them up on our end would be a lack of police detail or the weather.
Okay. Can we get more data on the location of and severity of leaks in this area? Can our approval be subject to that?
Okay, so Councilor Crossley is asking for more information on leak data, which I assume you're meaning it's subject to second call. Is that correct, Councilor Crossley?
Yes.
Approval would be subject to second call.
Which we can handle very quickly if we get the data, say within a week.
Okay.
But NGrid has to agree to get that for us.
Oh, sure, that's not a problem.
Okay. And we have to get it the week before this goes to full council.
What date would that be?
Just one moment, we'll get that. Let me look.
Thursday before next council meeting.
Next council meeting.
Let me look at my calendar here. That's the 25th. The 30th, I think, is our next city council meeting.
Yeah. But we have to open the public hearing on this.
Yes,
stuff.
I'm gonna open the public hearing before we take a vote, yes. So we need to have the answers by like the 26th, the 26th of January. Is that?
Okay, and you're requesting the leak information for this area.
Yeah. Yes, we are, by the
Okay.
26th in writing.
Pardon?
By the 26th of January in writing?
Sure.
Great. Okay. I don't see any other counselor hands up right now, but I am going to open the public hearing. It is a public hearing, so we'll hear from members of the public. I have Ms. Abramowitz and Ms. Zaleski. I don't know if your hand is still up or not. If you don't have.
Apologies. Going away.
Start with Ms. Abramowitz, followed by.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Leslie Zebrowitz. And it was a long list of repairs, and so I don't have them all in my head, but I have a couple questions. One is that it seemed to me that you mentioned 4-inch plastic pipes used as replacement. And I maybe you can explain why they're appropriate here, even though the inside isn't 4 inches, whereas they weren't appropriate in the other place where you had to use bigger pipes. And also, there was going to be a replacement of pipes that were put in 2010, and also several that were from the 1960s. And so I'm wondering why the whole, I don't have a picture in my head of exactly where this infrastructure is, but do all these pipes need replacing? Why can't you just repair or replace the ones that are leaking and not do all the others? Those are my questions.
Can those questions be answered this evening?
The integrity of the system, of keeping it intact for the safety of the residents. That's why they determine the size, the pressure, and the scope of the neighborhood, given the leak history of it. The 65 feet of 6-inch plastic dating back to 2010, that was probably an emergency repair, I'm just guessing, because it's a small amount of footage that might have been cut in. And the pipe from the 1960s, as the woman stated, that again, it was it's coated steel. So steel and cast iron break down differently. So that needs to be, that's 35 feet of that was put in. So it's just the integrity of keeping the whole neighborhood new. And Melissa, I'm sure, would chime in.
Yes. So 4 inches appropriate in this area because it is a 22-pound system versus the Paulson Road neighborhood, which is a lower pressure. So the higher the pressure, the smaller pipe size we can use. And I would assume as well, I don't have the details on that newer piece of pipe that we're replacing, but typically it is not quicker or more cost effective to tie into a short piece of pipe. But the tie-in time is pretty substantial versus relaying a short segment of newer pipe. So we typically run past it and just replace as we go.
Okay. It would be great to get a little more information on that 2010 pipe. And also, we don't have the same information in our packets. I'd like to, in terms of doesn't state the age of the pipe. And so what I heard repeated on this was not the same that I was reading. I'd like to make sure that ours is the same as National Grid. Just want to throw that out there. Okay, I just want to go to Councilor Kalis. I see his hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just, I felt like that Ms. Zebrowitz had a good question. It wasn't answered at all. Why can we go to smaller piping here where we couldn't on Paulson Road?
We can use a 4-inch pipe here because the pressure in that gas system is higher. So we are replacing a low pressure main with a 22-pound main. So it's the pressure change that allows us to change the pipe size.
Okay, and it seems like throughout these changes here, we're going from larger to smaller. So the pressure is different all around?
This whole, yeah, so if we were changing the pressure in the system, we'd have to do it for a continuous project. So this particular project is all converting low pressure gas mains to what we call IP, 22-pound main, which allows us to go smaller, which hopefully will speed up our installation rate. So we're out of there a little quicker.
All right, thank you so much.
No problem.
Councilor Kelly.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. And again, I'm just going to have to say I'm really looking for the long term here and the comprehensive and the consistency of how we view these petitions and how we mesh our goals towards climate change and the climate action plan. And I'm again hesitant here. I appreciate actually the experience that Ms. Mulroney is bringing to this. We've heard her many times before, and I respect that. But again, I'm hesitant to approve because I'm really trying to think about the bigger picture and the longer range for us. So I'm hesitant. Thank you.
Okay. Going back to the public, Mr. Persons, followed by Mr. Phillips. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Goldberg. Sorry, I didn't see your hand. It was not as, it's it's harder to see. Please, Ms. Goldberg, Mr. Parsons, and Mr. Phillips.
Okay, I just really quickly, I just want people to look at the map behind us and see how many old pipes and how many leaks we have and how much that is costing people. We're paying for the lost gas. And I think I would love to see maybe a conditional request that we start now with a working group on gas leaks and get the kinds of answers, the cooperation with the answers we want to identify what is our gas system made of? How old is it? You know, where should we be anticipating some of the necessary quick responses, and where can we legitimately try to work with the education of the community and our policymakers to get the transition in place. Let's be creative, use our imagination. There's funding, there's federal funding for heat pumps and retrofits and for alternatives. And we could start. I live on a small block of a square of 9 houses. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we all could cooperate and we have an 1898 pipe on Morseland? I mean, it would be a way to identify where the most likely low-hanging fruit for the transition could start, and it would be a cost savings. I think we should use these 2 projects that are that they're focusing on as an experiment to get the answers about cost and duration and problems, to begin to understand what we're paying for, and then to move forward and avoid as many of these emergencies as we can. There are so many high-risk areas. Every street on this map is a high-risk area, especially with the extreme weather we're dealing with as time goes on. So it would be a wonderful way of planning and exchanging information, but we need the transparency, we need the map, we need the history, we need the materiality of the system. And then we can work together to make sure we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldberg. That's a great idea with the working group. It has been raised before. And I was told that there's a working group at the state level as well. I don't know what that status is at all, but it's something to explore. But
well, Newton is a poster child for leaks, and I think we could be the leading town of the state, if not New England, on really, doing the education, doing the communication, and doing the transparency. I mean, this is not new. We've been asking for this since before the Merrimack Valley explosion disaster. We've been working on this. I would love National Grid just to fix the safety, the turnoff valves. If you have a fire in your house and you're one of those people with a corroded or paved over gas turnoff valve, you're in trouble. And every time I see one of those, I wonder who's minding the store.
We did address that at a prior meeting, and we did see some improvements with that, with the monitoring and making sure that they're open and available, but we can.
No, they're not. I mean, I take pictures everywhere. And again, the communication that would be reassuring and educational could really make a difference in Newton. And it would be something that I think everybody could then make intelligent, informed choices about what the best individual solution is for a block or a neighborhood.
We certainly are the poster child for gas leaks. Councilor Kalis, do you have another comment or question that came up?
I'll wait until they're all done.
Thank you. Mr. Parsons, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think there's one thing that would make it much easier for the council to understand what National Grid is asking for, and that would be something more graphic than the text descriptions we get containing lots of street names, addresses, numbers, footages, and so forth. Some of us trying to understand this problem have, for instance, taken a Google map and just colored in the streets that are listed as far as we can tell from where they start to where the grant of location request ends, or identify all of the houses with addresses that are on those streets that may have services connected to the affected pipe. And the reason I thought of that is I'm looking at the area that's described in the GOL you're currently considering near Circuit Ave, and noticing that there are a few grade 3 leaks, but in some areas surrounding the GOL, which are not affected by the GOL, there are even more leaks. So if National Grid were to provide this information in a map format, identifying the streets and the affected houses and showing where there are known leaks in that area, that would help the council understand, are we making much progress solving the problem we really see, which is the leaks? Or are we just building a new gas infrastructure system that those of us who can't afford to change to electrification will be paying for the next 50 years or 40 years, whatever the law permits? So I think having that map format would be extremely helpful on the next GOL request.
Thank you, Mr. Persons, for that suggestion. I think that's an excellent one. And I completely agree that lost and unaccounted for gas is probably broadly undercounted.
Chair?
Mr. Phillips, oh, Councilor Crossley, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm just a little confused by the last comment, and I want to make sure everybody knows that in our packets, we do get maps for every one of these areas that are proposed. We get a smaller scale map showing the entire area and with clearly showing us the extent of the new line being proposed. Then we get blown up maps to show where the gas lines are going with respect to other utilities in the ground and so forth. I think the only thing we don't see is also on those maps, where the leaks are, which I think is a good idea.
Are those maps leaked in the agenda?
I'm sorry?
Yes, they're on the Friday packet.
Yes, it's attached to the agenda. Right. We have lengthy materials for each one of these grants of location, even including detailed construction drawings, which probably none of us read. But the maps are quite good and quite detailed, but except for showing locations of known leaks.
Okay.
That should be included.
Yes,
I agree.
I agree too. Okay, Mr. Phillips, followed by Mr. Cantor.
Yes, thank you. And I am just learning about this new grant of location, so apologies for not knowing details ahead of time, because it is a whack-a-mole type thing. They're just coming up, so hard to keep up with. But what I heard here about the Circuit Area Avenue is that they're going to raise the pressure from, the current is about a half a PSI, a half a pound per square inch pressure is what I believe most of the low pressure system in Newton is currently at. And if they're taking that whole neighborhood up to 22 PSI, then that's like a 44 times increase of pressure in that entire system. And that means a 44 times capacity increase to serve new customers or to increase gas usage. So why is the pressure being increased? Is it for hydrogen blending? Because there's a big problem with pressure and hydrogen. Will the residents be informed about, the hydrogen, the increased pressure? Does that mean everyone's house will be changing their meter to accommodate the higher pressure? So it's raising a lot of questions about why the pressure increase. And then I wanted to make just a follow-up since Route 9 came up. And Route 9, like Washington Street through much of Newton, is critical mains. They're operating at 22 PSI, but there are multiple mains in Route 9 and Washington Street. And I'm wondering when, there's like the idea that you have to shut down the system. Isn't there some redundancy in especially those big arterials like Route 9, Washington Street, to manage, like in a shoulder season, a lining procedure that could be very less disruptive than a pipeline replacement? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Ms. Owens, are you able to respond to any or all of those questions for Mr. Phillips?
Sure, some of them. There was a lot in there. I'll hopefully
Yeah,
get
there
as
was a
much as
lot
I
in there,
can.
understand.
We will be replacing the meters at every customer that we upgrade, and they will also have a service regulator. So the individual customer's pressure will not change. We typically, if we're upgrading from the low pressure to the 22 pound, it's so that we can stop having 2 and 3 mains in every street. So that helps us make it all one pressure system, which eliminates streets with dual mains. Route 9 comes up a lot. You won't hear about it because it's a state road, so the permits won't necessarily go through you. There is some redundancy there when we do have some projects evaluating the mains on Route 9 right now. There may be a lining project or two in its future, but because we don't require a granted location from the city, most likely you won't see that. I would like to note that we do present a full work plan every year. And although we don't apply for all the granted locations at once, they are all listed. When we coordinate with the Public Works Department, we give them our work plan. So it may seem like whack-a-mole to you guys, but there is a plan, and we do rank them from projects that we feel are most troublesome, and those are our first priority. And that is also required by the DPU. We don't pick jobs at random, although it may feel that way when you only see them 1 or 2 at a time. There is a prioritization. There is review of leak history, current leaks. Lots of information goes into each one. And we do have to provide it to the DPU. So it is all justified and presented to the state.
So I think that's one of the concerns that I've been hearing tonight is more transparency and better information. Would that be something you could also share with the city of Newton? That information?
We do provide it every year to the Public Works Department.
Okay, so we're not necessarily getting all that information, I guess. So but maybe that's an internal discussion we have. So we're again, the idea of a citywide plan has come up several times, and we'd like to better understand how that would work. I see Councilor Crossley, do you have your hand up again? Or
No, sorry.
okay, if not, I want to continue with Mr. Cantor.
Hi, thank you, Chairman. Jonathan Cantor, 672 Chestnut Street. I just would like to remark, I guess, that it sounds to me that when you're changing all the piping in streets and neighborhoods, it would be much less expensive to install air source heat pumps in every house. And then they could have heating and air conditioning and do away with all the disruption that it causes and the time that it wastes, and provide better heating and cooling for the future for the citizens. So that's just what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Alperstein.
Yes, I'm, first of all, I'm lifting up what Jonathan Cantor just said. I didn't put my address before. It's 19 Hibbard Road, just so you know, I'm a resident of Ward 1. So one of the things that struck a number of us as we've been trying to make sense of all this is that the grants of location only represent a small portion, or we don't know how significant the portion is of work that is being done in replacement of pipes. So again, this may be information that some people have, but it would be really helpful to have it shared, because as we're worrying ourselves through these decisions on these individual requests, other pipes are being installed willy-nilly and replaced, and we're not even accounting or being aware of it. And that goes to the larger question of the site, the citywide plan, and the need to have the whole picture, and the cost analysis that, doesn't happen for each of these projects, but would be clearer if we knew everything that's going on. Specifically with this project, it's been raised that we could repair these few leaks if our short-term goal is to make sure things are safe, but then institute a project for transition, as Jonathan's just mentioned. And what would be the cost of that versus the cost of investing in pipe replacement? As I mentioned earlier, the climate law now allows for that kind of expenditure. We could be proactive about identifying these locations, working with the National Grid. So I'm just curious to know what portion of the projects that you're hearing in front of the Public Facilities Committee for grants of location, what portion is that of the overall projects that National Grid is pursuing?
Thank you, Ms. Alperstein. All good points. Mr. Klimov, Alex Klimov, please state your address.
Yes, thank you. Alex Klimov, 202 Evelyn Road. So a couple of things I'd like to say. One, certainly hard to hear when my neighbors are without heat, right? Don't want anyone to be without heat, and myself included, right? But in terms of meeting the city's goals for becoming green, etc., right? I'm not sure if it makes a whole lot of sense to look to National Grid to meet those goals. Wouldn't it be nice to have another alternative to network geothermal and all of the digging that has gone on our streets? Wouldn't it have been nice to have wells drilled to have access to geothermal energy for both heating and cooling that is much more efficient than air source heat pumps? Wouldn't it be nice to have a way where there's competition between National Grid and geothermal? An investment like that is not only green, but is much more efficient than other ways to electrify. Right? It takes a small fraction of energy to get heating or cooling from the ground that we're sitting on top of, rather than bringing natural gas or oil, across long distances. So a plan like this, and I totally support everyone who has brought up the need for having a comprehensive long-term plan and vision for becoming a green city. It's just that, and this is mostly to the councilors on the call, looking to National Grid to solve this issue may not be the best way to go about it. Maybe there's some organizations need to be formed where city takes the lead and hires the right people, as well as workforce, to build this infrastructure for ourselves and make it cost effective, rather than look to someone else to solve these problems for us, and do it in a way such that it really benefits the residents of Newton. And thanks very much for listening.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Klimov. So I have Karen or John Sloat. Oh, it's Karen Sloat. Okay.
Hi, I would like to ask a question. The last time the National Grid representative spoke and said that there is an annual plan that is given to the city. Perhaps Commissioner McGonigal could speak to that, and we could understand what those priorities are and why this the council doesn't seem to be aware of it.
Thank you, Ms. Sloat. I'll let the commissioner, if he wants to speak a little bit to that, but I've already been thinking that this is another big whole discussion, and there's at least one docket item that I would like to have it, rather than having them in context with these grants of location, to actually discuss about the plan. And Mr. Klimoff's point about geothermal, which we have been working on, that has come up, and we're not just putting it all on National Grid. But yes, we do need to have more transparency, and I think a more in-depth discussion overall about our plan for our gas supply and the future of our gas supply, and how we are going to get off methane and move towards non-emitting sources. Commissioner, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have anything you want to say this evening, but I do think this is a part of a larger discussion.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As we said, we do meet with NGrid monthly. We do share our paving, our water work, and our sewer work to coordinate all that. So yes, we do have at least a 1-year look ahead. It does change on a month-to-month basis. I don't think we've ever been asked for that plan, or we would have provided it. It's transparent. It does change, as I said, on a regular basis. This is something we've never had in the past. We started this about 6 years ago, which is really the reason for our monthly coordination meeting, is between our engineers, our streets department, our utilities division, coordinating all of our work. And as I said, we do that every month. It does change. We've also been working with NGrid over the last couple of months to address some of these SEIs, which we'll be presenting the list to you that we've asked them to repair and what they have repaired. That just started last month, so there are things in the works, but I'm happy to share any of that information. We have your questions. We'll be sure to answer all those, and looking forward to that larger discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Crossley.
Thank you.
Oh,
So as you just heard, I think maybe folks heard it, that we in the council are aware that the city DPW has been meeting with NGrid on a monthly basis in order primarily to coordinate our city work. And I give Commissioner McGonigal complete credit for that, because he initiated this. It was, prior to our developing our own strategic plan for street paving and sidewalk rebuilding and so on, and finding that our plan at one point was more aggressive than what National Grid was able to accommodate. And so there's needed to be a lot of coordination also with the sewer and water work. And that wasn't happening before 6 years ago. That's been critical. And I think what we have not been given is whatever National Grid gives to the DPW that they call their annual plan. And we also have been told clearly that this work has to be adjusted month to month because of weather and other unforeseen circumstances, and you're working underground, and you don't always know what's underground. So all that's, it's difficult work. But what we don't have, and we can't, we're using this meeting, we're using these grants of location, and I credit our chair for really opening this up tonight so that we can begin to have these kinds of broader conversations. But really, we're using these 2 grants of location as a way to begin to build a whole list of questions and concerns around, how this work is getting done in our city. And I think that's valuable, as frustrating as it is. But I also don't think we should hold, because I don't think we know enough to hold a project hostage to our ignorance. I'm going to say my own ignorance. I'm not going to, not vote for, well, like I said, if there's a chance that citizens are going to be left without heat and have water freezing in their gas lines, I don't want to be the one responsible for saying no to fixing a problem like that. In my neighborhood, which this is, a very old neighborhood, you know, I don't think we can use this project as a way of trying to convince National Grid to, and certainly not the people who are representing National Grid tonight, to line the pipes as opposed to replace the pipes, the 100-year-old pipes. On the other hand, I completely agree that we need a big plan, a long-term plan for, you know, beginning to cut the system back. I don't think you start with streets like Elliott Street. That's a main road. So there are huge, many branches of gas loops off that street. I think you have to start at the ends. This is how it's been described to me anyway, by people like Nathan Phillips. You know, you start at the ends and you begin to cut it back. You find a place that you can isolate. Now, my understanding, and I don't know if I've heard more about this from Commissioner Morse of Public Buildings than I have from DPW, but Commissioner McGonigal, are you aware of I believe Newton submitted 4 potential pilot sites for doing exactly that. I know one was the neighborhood around and Countryside School. It submitted 4 potential sites in the city of Newton for a pilot project to put in some kind of geothermal system. And I would think that DPW would be talking to buildings about that. And I don't know where it stands. I don't know if any of our sites were selected for the pilot. But that's the level to which this kind of thing is happening right now, barely beginning. So I think to me, it's as difficult and as frustrating as this is. I don't think we can stop the gas company from repairing their system. I think at this moment in time, I think we do, however, have to work on a larger plan. And I also think we need state help to do that. But, you know, I'd love to hear from the commissioner about, you know, hey, where's the bandwidth in our DPW, and how could the city of Newton take the lead on developing a long-term plan, a 10, a 20-year plan for really moving our city into clean energy? I don't know if you want to speak to any of that, Commissioner McGonigal, but actually the one thing I would like to know is, what do you know about the pilot projects that have been submitted? The possibilities have been submitted to the state.
Madam Chair, I'm not aware of any of the pilot projects. I know there was talk of it, possibly some of the upcoming school projects, but not any public land that I'm aware of.
Okay, probably this is something that Bill Ferguson could come in and discuss if you're going to have, Madam Chair, a meeting that is.
I see that, I know that National Grid had some pilots, and maybe Miss Tammy is gonna, please go ahead, Tammy, I see your hand is up. Do you want to respond to that specifically?
I don't know a huge amount. However, I do know Bill Ferguson has been involved. He has submitted information for the pilot program, and he is working with the group that handles that. That was the last email I had seen. And I want to say that was at the end of December. So they copy me on information, but I'm not directly involved, but I know they are still talking.
Yep.
So I don't think any decisions have been made where Newton's out of the running or anything along that line.
Thanks. I think Peter Barrow might know more about this. He's got his hand up.
Yeah. Mr. Barrow, do you want to comment on that? Geothermal?
You're muted.
I'm talking frequently with Bill Ferguson, and the last he heard was the end of December. It was unclear whether National Grid has or has not selected their first site. But the communication was that Newton was not in the first set. There were 3 applications: Pierce School, Countryside, and Franklin. And but it's unclear. I've written to National Grid myself, haven't gotten an answer. Don't know whether they've even picked their first site, although it was committed to be done before the end of last year.
I think that's another thing we definitely want to follow up with, get more information on that. It's a really important point. And I do want to, I believe earlier in our conversation, there was at least a recommendation, if not a motion, to approve this item subject to second call. Is that correct? What I heard? Okay, just want to remind the committee about that. I have a member of the public here in the room with me who would also like to speak. Please state your name and address, Larry.
Thank you. Larry Leclerc, I live at 17 Wild Road. That's in Woburn. I know Francis Street, Ellis Street. My 2 sons are class of 2023. They were born here. They have a right to a coordinated and disciplined retreat from our fossil fuel lifestyles. We see these gas hookups going into large new construction all over 02468 and other wards, areas of Newton. This is, it's unconscionable. But specifically, put that aside for a moment. I think we're heading in different directions here with the money. The cost of doing air source heat pumps, we just did a 900 square foot in Jamaica Plain. It's $28,000 for 4 heads and electrical upgrade. And that was with a great deal of work to obtain the lowest cost. And the state is putting a tremendous amount of money into that. Our home on Wad Road also, very expensive heat pump systems there. So we need to get onto a coordinated and disciplined retreat from fossil fuels. This is 2023. There are laws now that I believe more than make this a voluntary retreat. That's, I guess, all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I think there's a lot of people share your,
Yes,
your commitment on that.
Thank you.
Ms. Goldberg, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Mr. McGonigal might not remember, but ever since Mothers Out Front came to town, we have been staging annual, rallies and gas leak tagging events. Some of you may have been at our first rally on the City Hall steps. I know we have some fabulous crowd pictures. We thought people were beginning to, be aware of how much the risk and the loss and the pollution was costing us as a city. And we've tried every year to, broaden our reach and help people. We had a wonderful exhibit at the library last March to help people stretch their imagination around the clean energy that we're advocating for. And we've been asking the city for more information for years and have basically not had the information that we hope to get, so we could be, very informed, pro-social, pro-community partners. And I'm part of the 21 or 25 town multi-town gas leaks initiative. And many, many towns have had that similar frustration with lack of transparency, lack of information. And I'm hoping that we can turn it around tonight and just have a new appreciation. I know Mothers Out Front has been focused a lot on gas leaks, but also on clean energy advocacy. And I think we have a lot of answers, and we're looking for more cooperation. And I think we're all on the same page after our discussion tonight. So I hope
Yes,
so.
and I think we're working to make sure you get that. I'm totally on board with that. So it's after 9:30. I do want to start wrapping up this excellent discussion. So I saw Mr. Phillips had his hand up. I'll take one more comment from the public. And I'm not seeing any hands up from any other counselors at this point.
I could make it very brief and just, say that I really appreciate that this conversation has ended on potential paths forward. And I think that Newton could really help National Grid if they need help finding blocks and groups of willing residents who, instead of a trenching for a replaced pipeline, gas pipeline, would rather do a better investment on a geothermal system, that, you know, we can really be a leading community and, you know, do the grassroots work to develop the community buy-in.
Yes, thank you so much. Excellent point. So there is a motion to approve, subject to second call, to get questions before us in writing by the 26th of the month. And I believe that motion came from Councilor Crossley. Is that my correct, Councilor Crossley? Okay. So why don't we just do this on a voice vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any nays?
Nay, no.
One nay? Any abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. Okay. That passes. Thank you very much. I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm sorry, I should have closed the public hearing before we voted. But public hearing is closed, but the discussion is just beginning. I want to be clear about that.
Excuse me, I just want to take this away. You said questions. The only question is the leak information you want prior to January 26th of 2023 in writing of the leaks in that Elliott Street area, which is Councilor Crossley's area.
Yes, and I think I also wanted a little more information about that 2010 plastic main, why that needs to be replaced. I didn't quite understand that.
Okay, why it needs to be replaced.
Yeah,
Okay.
such a new pipe, yeah. Is that correct? Are there any other comments from the councilors about any other question that they wanted answered prior? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Okay, well, thank you very much. I just want to thank all the representatives from National Grid for coming here tonight. And I also am very grateful to the members of the public, our advocates, people that keep us honest, the ones that work so hard to make Newton a better place. Thank you so much for being here and for your comments this evening. I'm very grateful for that. So we just have one more item left, and this should be quick. It's item 323. It's President Albright reappointing Peter Barr of 60 Endicott Street to the Design Review Committee for a term of office to expire December 31st, 2023. Is there a motion? Is there any discussion?
I will move approval.
Councilor Crossley moved approval. All those in favor?
Happily.
Sorry?
Happily move
yes.
approval.
Yes, absolutely. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay. Thank you very much. Our business this evening is concluded, but we will be following up on this, and I look forward to our next meeting with the gas advocates as well. Okay, thank you very much. Everybody have a good night.
Aye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.